Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Fronteras to Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno. On our show today, we discuss a program that targets early juvenile offenders and helps them avoid time in a detention center and the criminal justice system. Please welcome Amber Parker with the Juvenile Citation Program of Las Cruces. Amber, thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Could you start off by telling us about this program? What are the goals of this program and who is eligible for it?
Well, the Juvenile Citation Program is a series of programs offered by the City of Las Cruces to young offenders in Doña Ana County. We do serve the entire county. What we do is we accept referrals from the Juvenile Probation Office for youth who are early offenders. And by early, what I'm meaning is it has to be their first, second, or third offense. The offense has to be a misdemeanor level offense or lower to qualify for the program, so it does not accept any felonies. The goals of the program, when we talk about diversion programs, what we mean is that the Juvenile Probation Office has screened the case and they have determined that the youth should not be taken into the formal system based both upon their current offense and their offense history. So what we try to do is give them an opportunity to have a consequence for the violation that they committed, but at the same time not introducing them into the formal system keeps them from getting that stigma of being a juvenile offender. If the youth successfully completes the program that they're assigned to, the case is closed informally without any further action by the court. So one of the major benefits to the youth is that if in the future they're applying for a job or maybe a college scholarship and some question is asked, have you ever been convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor, they can actually answer no, because they never went to court on the charge. There's no adjudication or what we would call finding of guilt. The offense does remain on their offense history, so if they were to reoffend following completion of the program, probation would see them as a second-time offender or third, whatever the case may be. So basically it gives them an opportunity to try to handle it informally. What we do is serve those youth who maybe have a smaller level offense and try to free up the probation department to work with the most serious violent offenders. So really it's a win for the system and it's a win for the child in the long run.
Now you mentioned freed up. I mean, it also does this free up the I guess a lot of time and hours and maybe dollars that the city might be spending for something like this?
Right. Well, our program is grant funded through CYFD, so we do get a large portion of our funding from the state of New Mexico, but we also match that grant with money from the City of Las Cruces. So dollar for dollar, we're kind of both in this thing together, both the city and the state, and it does free up CYFD's juvenile probation officers to work with those kids who, have come in contact with the system time and time again, or are felons, who have more serious offenses, those kids with the aggravated batteries or something of a much more serious nature, as opposed to a lot of our kids are maybe first-time possession of marijuana, shoplifting offense, something, they stole something from the mall. While those crimes do affect the community, we like to think that we can teach the kids some skills to allow them to be successful after the program, as opposed to being really punitive with them. When you lock up a kid in detention, their learning doesn't quit because they got locked up in detention, but what they learn are negative things. How to be a better criminal is what they learn when they get locked up, as opposed to in our program, they're learning skills. So we think that that's a huge benefit to both the child and the resources of the community.
Talk to me about the skills that they're learning and a little bit about the program and how it's broken up into different levels.
Okay, well, we do have a program for first-time offenders, but it's only for status offenders. And status offenders are the ones who that wouldn't be a crime if they were an adult and committed it, such as running away. You and I don't get punished when we don't come home at night, but kids are under a different set of rules. So we try to deal with them very briefly. We tell them what's the consequences of crime to both them and their community, what happens if they get in trouble again. They do a certain number of hours of community service, and then we kind of, just transition them out of the program. Our second level is more intensive. It is a 1-month program, and it's 25 hours of contact with us. The kids do both classes and community service, and the classes are small group, gender-specific classes where they will, learn with their same-age peers things about healthy relationships, drugs and alcohol, risky decision-making, domestic violence issues, or things, just all sorts of things that teens have to face that maybe they're not prepared for at home, unfortunately. That program also contains a mandatory parent and youth class, which it's not a parenting class. We don't teach parents how to be parents because we believe that they already know that part. What we try to do is improve their communication skills with their teenager, because a lot of times when these teens are getting into trouble, it's often the result of a breakdown in the home, whether it's because of communication, maybe an absence of a parent, something bigger's going on. They didn't just choose one day to wake up and feel like they wanted to commit a crime. There's underlying issues that are often going on. So we do have that parent and youth class, and then with that level, we follow up with those kids for 90 days after they complete the program to ensure that, after they're done with us in the active part, we're still making sure, are you doing okay in school? Are things okay at home? How are things with your peers? Are you staying out of trouble? So we follow up with those kids. The third level is a 3-month program. So the kids come twice a week for 12 weeks. And again, they're doing gender-specific groups. We also have many, many providers in the community that come in, and they're experts in any given field, whether it be the National Guard, it can be career planning, it can be domestic violence shelters, victims assistance unit with LCPD. We also have the city council comes in and does what we call a civic leader panel with the kids, and they talk to them about community engagement. So in that level, the guest speakers kind of play a key role in introducing the kids to different resources in the community that they might not know about. And in all 3 levels, I mentioned there's community service. In levels 2 and 3, they do group projects as well as individual service.
Does this program also, it seems like you mentioned community quite a bit. So how does this program, go through to help them become, I guess I should say, understand that they are a member of the community and that they are responsible for their actions?
Well, I think that we benefit the community in many ways. First of all, community service is an obvious thing that we do for the community because we have murals all over the city of Las Cruces that our kids have painted. We help at the food bank. We stock the shelves at the Salvation Army. We work at La Piñon. We work at all the different social service agencies we've probably had contact with. Our girls are working at Head Start this week, in fact. And I think that that's a huge benefit because a lot of those agencies have trouble recruiting volunteers. So we are a volunteer base for them. But in addition to that, I think, we've done a couple projects that have been very impactful. There's a storm drain on 2100 North Main, and it used to be a huge activity, high crime activity area. And our kids took that area over and painted a series of murals in the drain. They cleaned out the drug needles, beer bottles, excuse me, shopping carts, and now that specific storm drain, or that stretch, it's about 3 miles that we've reclaimed, has not been, it's been tagged 2 times in the 3 years that we've been in there. The group actually won a national award from the National Night Out Association for the project that they did because we saw a decrease in calls for service. There's a low-income project or low-income housing project right adjacent to that neighborhood, and they've had a reduction in calls for service by LCPD to that area just because we've created a presence there and kind of taken it back. I think the final benefit is, in terms of these kids getting back on track, there's less of a behavior issue with them at school. They're attending, where a lot of our kids are chronically truant at the time that they get brought into the program. Now they're starting to go to school, they're bringing their grades up, they're graduating, and that's a huge issue for our kids because when they come in and in January they've missed 50 days of the first semester, and we get them attending again, we get them re-enrolled. That's a huge bonus for these kids because 50% of kids that are detained in secure detention will drop out of school and never return. So if we can work with these kids in the community, then not only are we addressing that criminal matter that happened, but we're addressing those underlying issues that for why the behavior started in the first place. So the community gets a benefit of a much better, I think, return on investment than when you just lock up a kid. Because when you lock up a kid, you expose them to people who are probably better criminals than they are. So they learn more tricks about how to misbehave. Where if they go to our program, they can learn skills, and hopefully we won't see them back in the system.
What is the average age of somebody that's going through your program right now?
The youth in our program, they have to be anywhere between 12 and 17 at the time of the offense. So we're seeing anywhere from, some sixth graders all the way up to seniors in high school, and we've even had a couple NMSU students that have been in the program.
I mean, I guess a bulk of them are teenagers then.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's also a pretty insecure time in one's life. What types of things does the program offer to really build that self-esteem or self-awareness?
I think the curriculum that we use, the girls' curriculum specifically, it's called Girls Circle, and that is a nationally, evidence-based model sort of program, recognized program. They talk about body image, they talk about mother-daughter relationships, boyfriend-girlfriend relationships or dating relationships. They talk about making healthy choices. There's a chapter called Being Queen of Your Body. So, it's about respecting yourself enough to be able to say no when you know that a situation's not appropriate for you. We talk to them about drugs, alcohol, the refusal skills that, teenagers need. But I think a lot of what it comes down to is they're building relationships with healthy adult role models. My staff have far more contact hours with the kids that are on the program than those kids would be able to have with a probation officer. Our probation officers, unfortunately, have such large demanding caseloads of very intensive kids. The type of crimes that kids are in JCP for, you would maybe have a 30-minute contact time once a month with a JPO. So as opposed to coming in and running through a list of questions and walking right back out the door, with a probation officer, you're getting 4 hours or more a week with staff members that are trained to work with you on these specific topics. And I think it just really helps them unload a lot of stuff that maybe they've been hanging on to.
Talk to me about the difference of the kids when they enter the program to when they complete it. What are some of the signs that you've noticed from the kids when they enter to when they complete? Is there any difference in personality or, of course, I'd imagine how they're doing in school and things like that?
Right. I think school is a big target area. Obviously we get our kids back to attending school. We do monitor with them really closely. We don't drug test, but we see these kids enough to ask every week. We're asking a couple days a week, have you used? And they'll be pretty honest about it. One of the key strategies of our program is not just to give them JCP though. When they come into our program, we do an initial assessment with them where we assess their strengths and their needs with this tool that's called the Juvenile Inventory for Functioning. And so they go through this assessment process where they're answering questions and we're finding out some of those, like I said before, root causes of the behavior. So just because I stole a candy bar and I wound up at JCP doesn't mean that my only issue is shoplifting. Oftentimes, I might have issues with truancy. I might be smoking weed. I might be staying out late at night. I might have all sorts of other issues. So that assessment will pull out those other needs. And so we can refer out to the different mental health service providers, the substance abuse providing agencies, tutoring, and get the kids sort of like wraparound services would be what you would call it. So we're addressing the whole child and the whole family. So we'll check in with the kid. did you go to treatment today? You know, did you make it to your appointment with Dr. So-and-so? Are you taking your meds? Are you making sure that you're checking in with the guidance counselor at school? Whatever things we have identified as a need for that child, we're making sure that they're on target with all of those things. So I think that we see some really strong and healthy relationships between the kids in the program and the staff. They really do respect the staff, and the staff have a great way of getting the kids to open up and really address the issues. So
how do you really assess what each student, or I guess person that goes through the program is needing or to complete the program?
Well, I think that assessment is the key piece. Whether it be done by us, or we do have the Juvenile Assessment and Reporting Center in town. We're linked with them. They're open 24/7. Wherever the assessment is done, we make sure that the kid does get hooked into services. So we're making sure that what we see at the beginning, we're staying on top of it the whole time. Like I said, checking in. Are you going to see the mental health provider? Are you at school? And then when we end our active time with the kid during the tracking phase, we're going to continue to ask those questions. Are you still going? How are things, you know, with that program? Someone might come back and say, well, I really hate the therapist that you referred me to. We'll say, okay, well, we have a whole list of them. Let's get you a different one. Because we really want to see that family succeed. You know, we're just a brief intervention that addresses the criminal matter. And what we want to do is offer those kids supportive services that they can stay connected with long term. It might be mental health, but it also might be recreational services. It might be getting them into back into sports that they used to play but they gave up. It may be something that's art related or music related. So, you know, we kind of juggle a lot of different hats at JCP, but we want to make sure that after they're done with our time with us, after they're done with their time with us, that they're okay. So towards the end of their program, we're checking in with them to make sure that they have a plan for how they're going to occupy their free time once they're done with the program. You know, are you enrolled in, did you get back in band? Did you get back into football? What's your plan for how you're going to control your behavior with your friends? You know, when we do have gang-involved youth, how are you going to deal with that? You know, and so there's some tough questions, but I think that we try to prepare them as much as possible for what is life after us, because when they're with us twice a week for 4 weeks, we do eat up a lot of their time. But then when they're done, we have to make sure that they're going to be okay.
Now, let's talk about after they're finished with the program. What is your recidivism rate for the program, and how much of a success has it been?
Okay. Well, 97% of the youth who enter into one of the programs will successfully complete the program. So that means of all the kids who say, I'm going to do it, I want to be a part of this, I want this for my life, 97% of them will successfully complete. So we have a margin of those who are unsuccessfully discharged. Of the 97% that do successfully complete, less than 6% over the last 5 years have reoffended. So that's a huge number. You know, on average, most first-time offenders, 50% will be successful giving no intervention. But of course, you know, we are giving an intervention, and ours is much more successful. One of the things that, you know, has come out of this program and this success is that the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention recognized our program as a best practice program back in 2009. And I believe we're the only one still in the state of New Mexico for diversion programs.
So this is the only program, you said, in the whole state of New Mexico?
That is recognized by OJJDP, right.
Oh, wow. What, was there any models for this program, or is this program exactly expected, like as a model right now across the country?
Well, I would say that part of what contributes to our success is that we are using those evidence-based curriculums. So, you know, Girls Circle was an evidence-based curriculum that we implemented. Our boys use youth cognitive life skills in level 2, and in level 3 they use what's called the Phoenix program. Both of those are, you know, evidence-based programs, so that means that the research is solid on those things. So we implement those, but it's the whole approach that we do as a system that's recognized, because it starts from the point of arrest when that citation goes to JPO, and JPO screens it and they say, we are going to divert this case, not based upon your race, your ethnicity, you're a boy, you're a girl. We're going to say, you had offense A, you have this criminal history, we're diverting you, we're putting you in this program. So even that systemic approach to how we do things in Doña County really reduces a lot of those disparities in the treatment of youth, because we're not looking at them based upon, you know, color or what part of the neighborhood they come from. We're treating them as equals.
What happens to the students that, you know, are sent to the program but cannot complete it? Are they going to a detention facility?
Well, what happens when a kid is unsuccessfully discharged would be their case is still open. Their case is open for the duration that they're with us until, you know, the last day, the last hour of class. So if they fail to complete for any reason, whether they reoffend, they quit attending, their behavior is poor, that case is open with JPO. And so we have to, you know, let the family know we work with them as much as possible to try to, you know, have successful outcomes. But if a child is non-compliant and just isn't making it, then that case is referred back to JPO, and it's their discretion whether or not they want to file it with the district attorney's office or if they want to handle it informally in a different way.
Okay. Do you have any graduates of the program come back and speak to current people in the program? Does that happen?
We don't right now really have too many kids that come back. There are a few that will come by the office and say hello to staff. There used to be a time when they had a graduate panel. I think since we've grown, since we've gone through the expansion, it's been a little bit difficult because we have so few staff and so many kids that we're actively serving. But I do think it's a goal to kind of start bringing some kids back and use them as mentors or role models for newer kids in the program.
Tell me about some of the success stories of this program. What have some of the people that have went on and completed the program gone on to do? Or, I mean, are they anything, you know, besides, I guess, improving in grades, or do you keep in contact with any of them?
The longest that we track kids after completion is in our 3-month program. We track them for a year. So most of our success stories are just, you know, someone didn't reoffend. That's really our primary goal. They're not reoffending, they're going to school, they're maintaining their grades and attendance. You know, the kids that we have in level 2, they're only tracked for 90 days. So we tend to lose touch with a lot of the kids, unfortunately. We do work with a pretty transient population. Their phones might be on one day, the next day they move, phones are off. And so it's sort of a disorganized population. You know, some of the kids aren't, but a lot of the kids are. I would say 75% or more, probably those kids are very transitional. So it is difficult to have long-term contact with the kids. Yeah.
So you mentioned that, you know, obviously there's, you know, a lot of kids are in a transit situation, or what you have found is that issues aren't going well at home to where, you know, kids will end up with you. What are some of the things that you really find are going on at home that you know, usually kids act out on or commit a crime?
I think by and large, the trends that we see with several of the youth, now not all of the youth, but many of the youth that we serve are in a situation where one or more parents is out of the household. So they may be being raised by grandparents, aunts, uncles, family friends, and the reasons that the parent might be absent are several. It might be deportation issues because we are right here on the border in Doña County. It might be incarceration. We have kids who they're across the border, but mom and dad are not. They're just living with relatives because mom and dad made the decision that that's what they want for their children. So we do have a population that's confined by borders. Some of the kids we serve in Hatch, it's difficult for them to come down to Las Cruces because of the Border Patrol checkpoint. You know, they have family members who cannot travel. So I think, you know, a lot of that single parent or just zero biological parent can be an element of our kids. Another issue that we see are just communication issues that we have along the border, or generational issues, whether it be, the emphasis on education. Maybe mom or dad, they're busy trying to make ends meet in the household, so education may not be a priority for that family, and the child grows up not placing a priority on education, and then our system penalizes them for that because we have rules and we have laws, and so they find themselves, caught up in a situation where you're telling me I have to go to school, my mom and dad are telling me I have to go to work. We do have those issues with our kids. So I think by and large it's the family dynamic isn't maybe middle America's family dynamic, and sometimes the kids maybe rebel against that, or they become victims of that.
We just have a little over a minute left. Could you tell me exactly what is in store for the future of this program in this upcoming year?
Well, we're very happy that within the next year we are receiving additional grant funding to expand even more into the South County, because we see a huge need. The population's exploding down there in Sunland Park, Santa Teresa. So we're starting a mobile assessment unit through the Juvenile Reporting and Assessment Center, and that will allow us to reach more kids and thus kind of up the referral numbers for our program. JCP wants to serve more kids in the South, and we're going to we have a plan in place to bring our services to the South County, because one of the biggest barriers to kids accessing services and having equal treatment is that transportation issue.
Okay. Well, Amber, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Our guest was Amber Parker. She is with the Juvenile Citation Program of Las Cruces. I'm Anthony Moreno. This is Fronteras, A Changing America.